Agency owners do not like when I share this perspective, but if I worked for a carrier, I would be so incredibly discerning in the agents that I appointed. I know that makes it harder for young agents and new agencies. I get that. If I were working in a carrier today and my job was the agency plan, and many of them do this. I am not trying to tell you how to do your job, so anyone that's listening, please don't take offense to this opinion. This is just how I would do it.
Welcome to 5 Minutes, your quick dive into the wide-ranging world of insurance, technology, and leadership. I'm Miguel Edwards, and I'll be your guide as we explore these topics that are transforming not just the insurance industry, but the business world at large. Along with sharing observations I've made over the span of my career in insurance, technology, and operations, I'll be chatting with some of the brightest minds in business and leadership. Whether you're a seasoned executive or a rising star, an industry expert, or just curious about how technology is revolutionizing insurance, this is your perfect spot for your weekly dose of insights. This is 5 Minutes. You and I met, dang man, like 15 years ago or something like that. At least it feels like back when you were at the Trusted Choice part of Big I, and I was at the Big Allstate, and you were really pushing the envelope then, man. So, talk to me a little bit about your journey since then and what you've been up to, and then we'll dive into some cool topics.
So nothing has changed with pushing the envelope, for sure. When I was asked to not come back to TrustedChoice.com and Agency Nation, I parlayed that into Bold Penguin. I became the chief marketing officer of Bold Penguin, which was a good experience. Ultimately, and unfortunately, that opportunity ended too short, not necessarily because of anything with Bold Penguin, just I had a family member get terminally ill, and the dynamics of my wife and myself, I just couldn't be on the road, and that job demanded road time. So I actually left the industry for a brief period. For just about a year, I became the CEO of a fitness franchise, applied all the same marketing tactics and stuff that I teach to and have taught for years to insurance agents, applied it to that business. We grew incredibly well. That was a great experience and was always kind of meant to be short term. So the CEO or the founder wanted to come back in and be CEO. So we transitioned out of that. And that's when I started Rogue Risk. So I founded my own digital commercial insurance agency in 2020, March 9th of 2020, 7 days before the zombie apocalypse hit. And surprisingly enough, I ran the same exact playbook that I've been talking about for 15 years. And every piece of content that I created in Agency Nation, I ran the same playbook again with a few variations and refinements at Rogue Risk. And we were able to grow so fast using that model that we were acquired by SIA in 2022. And then we continued to grow at an exponential rate. And I exited in November of 2023.
Holy cow. Congratulations on that, man. That's amazing.
Thanks.
That is amazing. So, obviously I think one of the, the coolest things about your journey is all of the experience that you've had working in, on, and around the agency model. Give me a little bit of just some thoughts around what some of the number one challenges are in the agency model, the broker model. Independent agent, of course, is what we're talking about here. And maybe some of the solutions and some of the tricks and things that you've been really pushing on.
Yeah. So the number one issue impacting independent insurance agencies today is that leadership runs it like an independent insurance agency instead of a business. And I get a lot of people be like, if Rogue Risk was actually any good, then you'd still be working there. And it's like, no, it's a business. It wasn't my baby. I'm not an insurance agency owner. That doesn't define me. I was a business owner. I ran it like a business, and I played the cards that were handed to me. And when an incredible company with the respect and longevity that SIA has comes and offers to buy you, it made complete sense. I did another year and a half plus, 18 plus months with them. And at that point, it made sense to exit out of that. I think we get so hung up on this label of independent agency owner that we don't think like business owners.
Interesting.
And so that trickles down to all the other things. So we have the lowest percentage of gross revenue applied to marketing of any service business in our space, right? So that, again, we think, we're going to work on referrals, we're going to work through who I know, and all that is great. But I think, and especially your market who listens to this will understand, right? Carriers, rightly so, are increasing their requirements that they demand from independent insurance agencies. It's tough to manage a huge agency plant. It comes with all kinds of headaches. Consolidating and focusing produces much better results at the carrier level. And what's interesting, and again, this comes back to thinking like a business owner. If I were an independent agency owner, I'm going, those carriers, they're always just blah, blah, and I want to grumble at them. Instead, if you think like a business owner, you're like, okay, they're a partner, they're a vendor, right? What is driving their decision? Well, their decision is they would rather have less agents and more focus and attention applied to those agents because that's how they produce better results. Okay, so if I know that, I have to make decisions and align my business with either carriers who, if I can't hit those demands, apply demands that I can accept and hit, or I have to change the way I operate my business so that I can meet the requirements that they give me.
Sure.
And, I think the combative nature between that this unspoken combative nature between agents and carriers is a shame, right? Like, I think there was a day when it was backroom deals and handshakes, and those days are gone. These are big, publicly traded, for the most part, businesses that have quarterly profits, quarterly earnings they have to hit. They all have their own individual incentives that they have to run their business by. And you are not their obligation as an agency owner, right? Now, you have to do the same, right? I think sometimes we get hung up on a carrier relationship that we've had for 30 years. Well, just because you've had that carrier in your office for 30 years doesn't mean as they've transitioned their business that they're still the best fit for you. That's not a you should attack your that's not what I mean. I mean, we should constantly be thinking as business owners, surveying what's happening, what's going on in the market, what's going on with my partners, my technology partners, my workforce, my team, what is happening, and how do I continually adjust? Our industry, because we think like agency owners, we sit on these best practices that have been around for 50 years that many of which just do not simply apply in a successful manner today.
I love that, Ryan. So here's what I heard, man. When you start talking about the difference between agency owner and business owner. So first off, there's the emotional aspect of it. We need to disconnect a little bit. The other one that you talked about, though, that was really fascinating is that this concept of vendor management. And so if you start thinking about really these relationships instead of the, what can you do for me lately? It's really more of this. How do you manage this relationship so that you can get something out of it, which I think is fantastic. This willingness to change and adapt to the market is another fantastic element. And then the willingness to invest in marketing is something. Now, from my perspective, because I hang out mostly on the carrier side of things, I'm almost feeling like you just gave me a recipe to select an agent to work with. Yeah. As I'm thinking about agents that I find that offer those 5 dynamics that you just put out there, those might be my most productive agents.
Yeah. So agency owners do not like when I share this perspective, but if I worked for a carrier, I would be so incredibly discerning in the agents that I appointed. And look, I know that makes it harder for young agents and new agencies. I get that. And if I were working in a carrier today and my job was the agency plant, right? I was in charge of the agency plant. I would, and many of them do this. So I am not trying to tell you how to do your job. So anyone that's listening, please don't take offense to this opinion. This is just how I would do it cold of what's actually happening in the market. Many of you may be doing this, but I would have my core plant would be right down the middle. Like if I had 5 triggers or 3 triggers or 7 triggers, whatever they were, I would be incredibly discerning to the agencies that met those requirements, and I would double into them. Then you have your white gloves, red velvet rope, VIP, the guys and gals that just pour business into you, who are your true believers. I'd have like dedicated AMs specifically for them, and that's what they did. And then I would take a very small portion of my plant, depending on your size and scope, 5%, maybe no more than that. And I would start to take flyers on new models, new agencies that where maybe I think of it almost like an angel investor, right? You come in, you're dissecting how are they attacking the market? Who is the owner? What's their energy? What are they trying to go after? And maybe they're small today, but have a program where you guide them into getting into your main target plant, right? So it's almost like you have your, you got your pro players at the top, right? That's your MLB guys to talk baseball. My AAA team is just my guys who I know are going to be there. They're good. They fit all my requirements. And then you want to have a rookie ball or an A-level team that you can kind of nurture and cultivate because you believe in what they're trying to do. And that's how I would striate and think of it, as almost like a talent development pool versus just appointing people to put business on the books.
You got it. I love that. It's a pipeline approach to things that makes perfect sense, and making sure that, and just like using your baseball analogy, if you're not performing in the lower leagues, you get cut, and you get cut quick.
I can tell you from firsthand experience growing Rogue, the carriers who were willing to take a flyer on us to say, hey, I know you're new, but I kind of like what you're doing. I like the market you're going after. I'm willing to invest in you. Those were the carriers that I, one, was able to develop early relationships with, and two, I had loyalty to. Yeah. So, there was a whole nother group of carriers who I don't do. This is not a knock on them, right? They weren't willing to take those flyers. And then when we started to hit a certain size, they started to sniff around. And now I got to be more discerning with them. Right. And I started to push back a little because I'd say, geez, you weren't really there for me at the beginning. Now that I've kind of proven it, now you want to come in and you want to skim the cream. Like, why would I take business away from this company over here that got in on me early? Again, I am not advocating for a large portion of your agency plant to be, these new agents. But if you have a smaller group that maybe they have to make a few commitments or what, I don't know, and there's a development plan for them, you can get in early, build some loyalty, and if they do hit escape velocity, well, now you're in the gunner seat. Let
me shift a little bit to the concepts of marketing here. Talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing on the agency side, specifically as it relates to digital marketing and content marketing. Like, what are you seeing in trends, and what is the need out there for agents to really be thinking about it? And my perspective, again, from a carrier on the carrier side is, what do carriers need to be doing to support that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So we took a 3-prong approach at Rogue. Our core foundational method of driving new business into the agency was inbound marketing. Okay. So and it's not rocket science, and people get hung up and I don't want to be on video and all that stuff. And that's fine, because that just leaves more business for the people that do. But all I did in the simplest form was stand in front of a video camera, and for 2 to 5 minutes, I just answered very common, very basic questions about insurance. What is general liability for an excavation contractor? And then I'd answer that question. How does workers' comp, what's the best workers' comp for a bakery? And then I'd answer that question. And then I did that 450 times, right? I mean, I just record 4 to 6 videos every Monday, and then we'd produce them real quick. I mean, we just all templatize. I mean, this is super easy stuff. And then we would just schedule them out, and out they'd go. And, we were driving at our height 15 to 20 leads. That's probably too much through that channel. 12 to 15 leads a day through YouTube, just through YouTube and our website, just SEO. So that was prong number 1. And that was our foundation. And the reason that I like that as a foundation is because you can you can not be in the office and still get leads. Right? It's just always, the internet is always working for you. People always have questions. They go find it. If they like you, if they like the way you talk, if they like the way you talk about the answer, they contact you, whether it's via phone, text, email, whatever. So I like that as a foundation. Okay. Once you have that foundation in place, then the next 2 prongs are strategic cold outreach. And how we did it was using video. Okay. So if I wanted to work with you, I would pull up your website, and we used Loom, and I would pull up your website on Loom, and I pull it up and I'd say, hey, Miguel, I see you're an excavation contractor. Looks like you dig below 10 feet. Looks like you have a couple trucks. I got to tell you, I have a market that absolutely dominates where you're at. Additionally, we have over 100 clients inside our book of business that look and feel very similar to you. We're very, very consistent. We're very confident in our ability to address your needs. If you aren't getting, blah, blah, blah with those trucks that you have, I think it's worth a call. Would you be interested in a couple minutes, right? Something like that. I mean, I just made that up off the top of my head, but cold video outreach. Now, the reason we do cold video outreach versus phone is, one, it takes 100 phone calls to get 2 appointments, right? Like, that's the whole method. We were finding somewhere between 10 and 15 video outreaches would get 2 appointments. And the reason is because if you get an email, and the cool thing about Loom is in the email, when you like add a Loom link, it puts a little thumbnail up. And if it's their website, you can't not click on a video that has your website in the email, right? Like, you can't not click on it. Like, your brain's like, wow, they were on my website. Holy crap. And then when they hear your voice, they see your face, the little circle in the bottom left, they see their website, and here you are addressing the specific needs based on what they see on their website in 90 seconds. They're like, shit, I got to talk to this guy. Like,
love it.
Like, look at the time he took. Like, he understands my, they've never been prospect to that way. So we use that for outreach. And then the third prong of that approach, this is a little longer burn, but it's really where you make your hay, is through partnerships. So how we did this was, I would go to the app store on my iPhone and I would pull up, I'd put like landscaping in, and there's all these apps dedicated to helping landscapers. Some of them are for like personal stuff. So obviously that's not necessarily what we want, but we would want to find the ones that were related to landscapers and business. So some app, maybe like an accounting app or a surveying app or a proposal app, whatever. And then I would reach out to the CEO or the founder or someone on their team and say, look, like, we write landscapers. We're in all 50 states. If you're looking for an additional revenue stream for your business, we have a program that we can partner on. And if you refer us business, we can pay you. And that took 2 forms. Usually the first 3 months would just be a straight $25 referral fee. And we did that because $25 sits basically underneath the limit that any state has for a non-licensed referral. And then if that pilot went well, then we would look to do a joint venture where we could actually share in profits. So the referral partners send you a massive amount of very targeted accounts. The outreach allows you to be very strategic in bringing in maybe whales or strategic accounts that you know are very good for your book. Sure. And then the inbound just keeps a constant flow of business coming in. And those 3 prongs are how we were able to grow so fast.
I love it, man. And that ties right back to what you were saying before about the need to be a business owner. I mean, you're talking about thinking outside of the box, thinking about new ways, new paradigm shifts, as opposed to just sitting in your office doing the same old agency model. And these are things, by the way, it's funny, as you're thinking of, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, man, I could use that in my own marketing for my own consulting business. So I love it, man. This is great. I get some free marketing advice here.
And then here's the thing. I didn't say referrals.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So referrals, if you're doing your job, referrals just come in.
They just come. Yeah.
Like, referrals shouldn't be a in my opinion, the people that push referrals as a marketing strategy are missing the point. Referrals are gravy. Referrals are how you go from the 5 Series Mercedes to the 7 Series Mercedes. They're cream. You should be asking every account every time for referrals. It's a baseline. I shouldn't even have to say referrals. But there are people out there that are like, my primary marketing method is referrals. If I were a carrier rep and I heard someone say my primary method of getting business is referrals, I would put a little asterisk next to their name and be like, these guys might be in trouble, because I don't know that you can grow fast enough to meet the demands of the marketplace if you're just working on referrals.
Talk to me a little bit about technology here, Ryan, from an agent's perspective. One of the battles that I have fought a lot during my career as a carrier technology leader is providing the technology that agents need and the experience that they need. And I'm sure you can appreciate the fact that as a carrier looks at the agent plant as really the customer base, not so much the end policyholder, right?
Yep.
And so talk to me a little bit about, what you see from the agency side. And if you're talking to a carrier CIO, what's your advice to me as a carrier CIO as to where I should really be focusing my attention and my investment dollars?
Yeah. So this is a very big question. I think I'll start first with the basic technology that I think an agency has, and I think we'll back into where the carriers can fit in.
Yeah.
So unfortunately today we still need to have an agency management system. The fact that our industry runs on AL3 technology, every CIO in every genre and every vertical in our industry should slap themselves in the face right now. Like, the fact that all the CIOs haven't revolted over AL3 and just come together and be like, we don't care what all you think. We're doing something different, right? If we could just get to the knots, I mean, that's like 70s technology that we're using. Right. And that's insane. The limitation to that keeps us held back, right? And every new entrant who doesn't have to use AL3 or can find a way around it does, because it's terrible. I mean, it really is a huge handcuff to us. Now, unfortunately, we have to deal with it. So you still need an AMS. I don't have any good recommendations for AMSs. There's lots of new entrants. They're still young. Iris InsurTech is very interesting. I like some of the stuff improvements NowSearch is making. Applied seems to have started to make some headway and make some improvements, but these are still, they're just tough softwares to use. Mm-hmm. That being said, the primary software that every single agency should have outside of their AMS is a CRM. Your agency management system is not a CRM. For some reason, all the agency management systems have decided not to build even basic CRM functionality in, although they tell they will. None of them have it. Mm-hmm. And I think Vertafore was very smart in purchasing Agency Zoom. Agency Zoom is a great CRM. Better Agency. There's a few others, but you need to have a way of managing if you're going to do real flow, right? If you're just thinking and dunking along, then who cares? But if you're really trying to grow, you have to have a way of managing multiple producers, account managers, the flow of leads, where they're coming in, being able to track what's winning, what's losing, where are your close ratios. Like, these are stats that we have to start to take seriously. And, the fact that, we were able to drastically increase our close ratio, by really thinking through how we segmented our CRM and then being diligent about tracking what the results were, right? Mm-hmm. When a lead comes from this lead source, how often is it qualified? How often does that qualification then become something we quote? Once we quoted something from there, does it actually become an account, right? Even if you just track those basic metrics, what you'd find is you'd start to figure out where you're winning, where you're losing. And then again, if we put our business owner hat on, we can start to say, okay, are we doing something wrong? And that's why this particular lead source isn't producing results? Or is this lead source just not a good lead source and something that we should throw away? Mm-hmm. Because, we saw the fastest growth at Rogue when we started to dial into the three channels that I mentioned, when we started to dial into the channels that were working and throwing away the channels that were not working. Paid ads didn't work for us. Straight cold calling, I know it still works. And oh my gosh, all the middle market producers are going to want to jump through the screen and kill me. But I think cold calling is a waste of time. I think just the volume of cold calls you have to make to produce one account to me is great for a self-oriented producer, terrible for agency owners, right? And I think that's something that we don't talk about enough. If I'm just thinking about my own personal income to my family or to myself, then sure, I'll spend that time in cold call because all I need to get is a couple $100,000 in personal income and then I'm good. Right. But if you're an agency owner and you're trying to grow and your team is wasting all that time on the phone, to me, that was something I wasn't willing to deal with, and our numbers proved it out. So you can start to cull away the lead sources that don't make sense, right? So again, think like a business owner. So that's the primary one. I think, we can talk about AI in a minute if you want to. I'll skip that for now. If I'm a carrier, right, and I'm thinking, how do I work closer with these guys, right? If I can get rate quote bind on personal and small business into the CRMs directly, I immediately become option number one. Right. Immediately. Right. Now, I get it. It's all proprietary and API. That is ego and territorialism, right? If the goal is to put policies on the books, then you need to be where they are doing business. Mm-hmm. Every single time an agency, someone from an agency has to go over to your portal and put the information in. And I also am not a huge believer in comparative raters, especially in commercial lines, but we can talk about that if you want. But I think I get why carriers want agents to come to them, right? I get that. That makes complete sense from their perspective. But I don't think it serves the goal of putting more policies on the books. If I were thinking more policies on the books, what I would want to do is be where they're actually transacting the business. Where does that lead, what system does that lead come into? I want to be there. There's no reason, if you can put the buttons on your website, you can put the buttons other places. I mean, this is 2024. That's not rocket science. So it's really just a business decision not to do that. I get that there are things we got to talk about. I'm not saying this is just like a pound the desk, let's go. But I would start to find, how do I get my product to the place where the agent is doing business? And if I'm there and I can produce at least some results, even if it's for a small number of classes, that agent is going to over-index on you, because they don't have to portal out. They don't have to go someplace else. They don't have to work in a different system. It's not another tab on their screen, right? And I would really be thinking about, where are all the places that I can get functionality into the systems they're using? And the more you can do that, I think that'll be a huge win.
Love that. Go ahead, please pivot into comparative raters for small commercial, man. I want to get your take on that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I was a huge early adopter of Tarmica, and love Rags, love the team there, amazing people. And they did a very good job at that tool. So this is not a knock on comparative raters. However, from decades worth of experience, certainly very hardcore experience when I was running my agency, they just don't add any real process improvement. We like,
because of the reliability of the quote, it's not there.
Yeah. And I don't need 17 quotes, right? Like, what I want is, again, so what we did was we started to really press our carrier partners for what they wanted, how they wanted it delivered, like what were their home runs? How do we know if we come to you with this type of account, you're going to be bang on every time? Like, let us know what those are. Then we can sculpt our lead flow to say, okay, when a bakery comes in, Hartford. When a consultant comes in, Travelers. When a tech company comes in, Chubb, right? What we started doing was, we weren't comparative rating at all. We were, based on what the business was, we were going straight to the carrier that we as a team had determined was the number one option for that. So we basically had a 3 carrier list for almost every class code that came in, or some of them were a little, not necessarily all the way down to maybe 4 digits on a NACE, maybe 2 digits on, or 3 digits on a NACE. But we had a 3 carrier list for almost every class code. And basically when that lead would come in, we had a very basic internal chatbot, which just read documents we uploaded to it. Very, very basic. But basically our team would just put in bakery, and it would come up and say, whoop, here's the 3 carrier list. And they would just go right to number 1. And if that quote looked good, out it went, because, we had a bar for the quality of the paper, and we had a bar for claims handling and that stuff. So I knew, say, I go to X carrier, they're number 1 on this list. So my producers knew if they went to X carrier and that carrier had what we felt was a reasonable price, I didn't care if Y carrier was $100 less or whatever. That didn't matter. We never sold on price. Like, it was about turnaround time, meeting expectations for the customers, getting their problem solved. Like, when someone reaches out to an agent, they have a problem, they have stress, right? Cold calls are different, handled a different way. I'm talking about partnership business and inbound leads. These people have problems. I just hired my first employee. I know I need workers' comp. I don't have a clue what it is, where to get it, or who writes it. Okay, great. Until I deliver them a proposal that solves their problem, they have stress and anxiety in them. So our goal was to solve that stress and anxiety as quickly as we possibly could. And I think going directly to the whoever your prime carrier is for that particular class of business, comparative rating just doesn't improve that process.
It's a great perspective that answers questions for carriers that are thinking about making that investment, because it's an investment. And what I heard you say earlier is, rather than putzing around with the comp rater integrations, why don't we go directly into where the agency technology lives?
Now here's the rub.
Right.
The carrier's got to be consistent. If you tell me you want bakeries, and bakeries are your main vein, and you're going to crush bakeries, and you got a great bop and package and bop, I can't then send you bakeries and have you give me shit.
I hear you.
I just can't.
I hear
right?
you.
Like, we had a couple carriers that we started this process with, that when the rubber met the road, we found, geez, like 2 out of every 5 are getting bounced for like silly reasons. Sorry, we can't send those to you. You just got bumped down the list, right? Doesn't mean you won't get any. It just means you're not number 1 anymore because you're inconsistent.
Yeah.
I don't care what your requirements are. just be consistent in those requirements, and then I can build processes around them.
Sure.
I don't care. You could tell me, we don't like, business owners with red hair, they're crazy. We don't want them, right? Okay, great. But then don't accept some and not accept others, right? Like, you just be consistent with your requirements, and then I can build processes around whatever your requirements are in my business, not my agency, my business, to make sure that I'm getting you the type of business that you want on a consistent basis.
I love that. So my audience is hearing in that the need for very, very clear description of what the appetite is. And then with that clarity needs to come consistency. It's a simple formula.
Yeah, and then they've done their job. That's all agents want from the carriers. Tell me what you want, be consistent in what you deliver, and then it is on the agent to work around those requirements. The carriers shouldn't have to constantly be moving the goalposts for the agents. I don't care what you want. Tell me what it is. Let me develop processes, marketing plan, procedures, put the right people in place to get you that thing. Just be honest when you tell me that's the thing you want. And I'm not saying they're not, just that's kind of the give and take.
And you mentioned a couple minutes ago, the word that we just can't escape. You mentioned AI. Where the hell does that fit into this entire conversation, Ryan?
So just to be honest with everyone, I'm just completely enamored with AI. Maybe not in the ways that people would expect, but I do honestly believe that this is going to be and will be, and I don't think this is like a revolutionary idea, but it's just where I fall on this topic. This is a human history changing technology, right? This is the printing press. This is fire. This is the wheel. I really honestly think it's that big of a movement and change in the way that we operate as humans. That being said, as it was described to me by a guy that knows a hell of a lot more about AI than I do, we are raking the field. The players aren't even warming up yet, right? Like, that's how early we are to the game. Sorry, all my analogies are baseball.
That's all good.
I coach baseball and I play baseball and I can't get out of my head. We're in the middle of summer. But that's how early we are in this stuff. So where it's going, I think we can predict the very macro change of this is changing the course of human history. Micro change, it's a crapshoot. That being said, here's where I fall. Everyone listening to this, the organization that you work in somewhere, whether you're part of it or not, is having very high level, very broad conversations about how to use AI. Everybody is, okay? I think the feedback I've been getting, and it's not like I'm sitting in a lot of boardrooms of carriers, so I don't know this for a fact, but I have a lot of people that I talk to. I think a lot of the conversation is misaligned, right? A lot of the conversation is around what functionality should we be adding? I think that's the wrong first question. The first question we all should be asking is, how do we make sure our data is private and secure when we're using AI? Okay. So if you're unfamiliar, and I apologize if you are and you have to hear something you already know, the large language models like OpenAI, Claude, Llama, et cetera, they're all shared data models. So what that means is every piece of information that we're putting into those systems has the potential to be nefariously prompted out. Now, a lot of the tools that sit on top of those, so most of the tools that we see in the insurance industry right here, and I'll tell you, I've been at 6 different InsurTech conferences already in 2024 because I sit on the board and kind of do some fractional CMO work for a company called Lincora, which is an AI company in the space. We can talk about them if you're interested. But I've been to these conferences, 95+% of the tools that we see in the market are sitting on top of, they're a program sitting on top of one of these large language models. Right. So we have to be very, very careful. Now, there are security parameters that those tools can put in place, but understand that if it's pulling information, if the information you're putting in is in any way integrating with the the words that are coming out of one of these large language models, there is a chance that your information be prompted out. So security is A1 priority, right? Which means I think for our industry, we can use OpenAI and stuff for marketing. But when we talk about core system functionality, predictive analysis, benchmarking, adjacent results, trending data, predicting out models and stuff like that, we have to start to look at private models as an option for our industry, which is the way a lot of other highly regulated industries have gone. They all push OpenAI, but that's what's serving their email marketing and their messaging and ad placement, stuff like that. They're not using those in their core systems. And we have to be very, very careful about that. The caveat and the point that I want to make in this conversation around AI is that I think security and privacy of our information has to be paramount, and we have to be very smart with that. That being said, we cannot sleep on AI. Can't sleep. Our industry prides itself on being a laggard to technology, and I do not think this is a moment in which we can be a laggard. The businesses, whether they be carriers, MGAs, wholesalers, E&S brokers, retail agents, the organizations, the businesses that are adopting AI are going to see the margin of growth between those who adopt AI and those who don't is going to grow so fast that there will come a day that you cannot catch up. And that's my warning shot. And that's not doom and gloom. It's all opportunity. Yeah. But if you're sitting on the sidelines going, we're going to give this a year or two and see what happens, I think your competitors who got in early, maybe felt a few lumps, but ultimately figured it out, started implementing and started to capture that efficiency and effectiveness that comes with proper AI implementation. They're going to be so far out ahead of you that catching up could become almost impossible, right? I don't think there's been another technology that creates the separation that AI does.
Pre-show comments, we were talking a little bit about your gig here with Lincora. Please, dive into that, because I think that was fascinating.
The interesting thing about Lincora is that the founders actually were in a different business when I first met them. They were in the data business, and I got to meet them, liked them. We were working on a project to get their data implemented into Rogue so that we could get information out quicker, whatever. So when I exited from Rogue, they were actually had sold and exited that business and were founding Lincora. And, were just kind of telling me about it. And what captured me was two things. One, they're a private AI model, so they have that security piece. But the other piece to it that I think is just a core differentiator of private model businesses versus these large language models is with OpenAI, it is the best tool in the world at predicting the next word that should be said. But that's all it does, right? All it's doing is reading Reddit, Facebook posts, Wall Street Journal, all these different data sources. And it's looking at the string of words and learning when this word is said, what is the next most possible word, and doing that over and over again. And they're the absolute best at that. What it can't do is transact. So if you ask OpenAI, what does 1 + 1 equal? It's most likely going to tell you 2 because it's seen it 100 million times, right? However, it doesn't know that the answer is 2. It just believes the answer is 2. What Lincora has done is basically built 2 models that run, kind of simultaneously, which both understand the language of insurance and have the transactional capability to know that 1 + 1 = 2. So now we can do things like predictive analytics, industry benchmarking and trending, agent performance metrics, adjacent relationships, which I think is really, to me, something like adjacency with AI is a really interesting concept that I had never thought of before. So what adjacency is we can look at a book of business, dissect that book of business, understand where you have the biggest wins, where your biggest lifetime value comes from, where your lowest churn rate type accounts are, and then go out into the marketplace and through different business databases and website scraping go, this business right here, which you may not even know exists, looks, feels exactly like these 70 businesses that you already have in your book, this is a good account to go after because you know you have the markets, you know you have the expertise, and you already have the case studies behind you to go get that account. And that's just one case study of what adjacency can do. But if we don't understand the transactional nature as well as the language, we can't do things like that.
To be honest with you, you educated me on this because I actually always thought that there was actually calculations going on in the background, and when you're using the OpenAI model. So that's that's an education for me. So thank you for that. But I'm really fascinated. And by the way, I'll link to Lincora here in our show notes because I think that's really fascinating developments here, specifically as it's pointed at an insurance industry. Let me shift gears for my final question here, man. Because I was all over before we got to meet. I went on, looked at your podcast and your show, and you spend a hell of a lot of time talking about personal and professional performance. This concept of peak performance, right?
Yeah.
And in other shows that I've done, there's been this commentary about how kind of post COVID, we're all stressed the hell out. We're all overworked, especially that middle management layer, right? Is just getting the snot beat out of it on a regular basis. Talk to me a little bit about, some of your thoughts, your thinking, your coaching, some tips and tricks for my listeners that are in that space. What should we be thinking about for that peak performance, that personal health, that kind of clarity that we really need to be finding?
I like to talk in terms of frameworks because I have hardcore ADHD. And, I've had to go to counseling and stuff to try to figure out all, how my brain works. And basically what I found is that I am willing to, because ADHD increases your risk tolerance. When you have ADHD, you tend to be more of a risk taker. I'm so willing to take risks that sometimes I shoot from the hip. I know that about myself. So what I've had to do, and this is me hitting my peak performance, is I developed frameworks, and some have been around for a while, that I will use to put guardrails around a decision so that even though I may come right from the hip and go, this is what I want to do, I'll then work it through this very simple process. And it takes some of them take 5 minutes to work through, right? They're just basic thought processes, thought experiments that you go through. And then I go, oh, this was the right decision. Or I get to the bottom and I go, maybe I need to pause on that one for a while and think through it a little more. And that allows me to operate at my best. Your brain may work different. You need different tools. You have to figure those things out. But I guess my general sense is be great at something. Yeah. Like push yourself. Like if you're so stressed out that you can't be a good partner or a good parent or whatever, fix it. And it's not the job's fault.
Right.
It's not the job's fault. Now, I'm not saying your job is great or that you should love it, but those feelings are because you're not taking care of yourself in other places. And once you start to, what you'll find is maybe the job isn't so bad. Maybe there are things about the job that actually are challenging, that actually do put you in a position to be successful. Now that your brain isn't foggy every day because you have tons of inflammation and you're dehydrated, or you're drinking every night and you're showing up a little hungover and you're just used to it. Like all of a sudden your brain starts to clear, right? You're standing up a little taller, you're thinking clearer, you're a little more creative, you're a little more receptive to critical feedback, right? And all of a sudden you're going, my job's not so bad.
I can't thank you enough, man, for the time that you spent with us here on the show. Listen, by the way, I think there's a hell of a lot more on the Ryan Hanley show, ryanhanley.com, where we can continue this topic of conversation around peak performance. Yeah. So, because I spent all night a couple nights ago just reading, going through all those shows, and you've also too been a guest on a number of really interesting shows. But dude, thank you once again for an awesome perspective. I'm going to link not only to your show, but also to the Lincora down in our show notes. And you've really shared an incredible amount of insight for us. And I can't wait to see you on the circuit, man. It's been too long. We got to catch up and grab a cup of coffee, dude.
Yeah, I'll be around this fall. I got about a half dozen gigs this fall. I'll be at ITC. Dude, I appreciate you. These conversations are so necessary. It's a pleasure to be here with you and connect again, man. I enjoyed all our negotiations when we did them, and just appreciate you and so happy that you're out here doing this, man.
Love it, my brother. So I'll see you in Vegas for sure, man. I'll be there.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining this episode of 5 Minutes. If you've enjoyed our discussion, we'd love for you to share it with anyone else you think might find it interesting. Also, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on and hit that bell to stay on top of the game with our practical 5-minute episodes. We look forward to seeing you again next week.